The morning sun had just begun to rise over the city, casting a golden glow through the windows of the Daily Grind Cafe. The air smelled of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries. People hurried in and out, grabbing their drinks before rushing off to work. The line stretched nearly to the door, filled with tired faces and sleepy eyes. Near the front of the line stood Marcus Johnson, a construction worker in his late 30s. His boots were dusty from an early morning job site visit, and his hands were rough from years of hard work. He rubbed his tired eyes as he waited his turn. Coffee was the one little luxury he allowed himself every morning. It gave him the energy to get through long days of lifting, hammering, and building under the hot sun. "Just a large black coffee, please," Marcus said when it was finally his turn. The barista nodded and began preparing his drink. Behind him, a woman sighed impatiently. Marcus glanced back and saw a well-dressed black woman in a sleek navy blue blazer, her hair styled in neat curls. She was typing rapidly on her phone, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the screen. A designer handbag hung from her shoulder, and her sharp outfit made her stand out from the crowd of casual coffee drinkers. When Marcus moved aside to wait for his coffee, the woman stepped forward. "Oat milk latte with an extra shot of espresso, please," she said in a smooth, confident voice. The barista rang her up, and the woman pulled out a shiny black credit card. She swiped it, but the machine beeped loudly. "Declined" flashed across the screen in red letters. The woman frowned. "That's strange," she muttered. She tried the card again, but the same thing happened. She reached into her bag for another card, flipping through a sleek wallet filled with what looked like expensive plastic. Marcus watched as she struggled, her polished demeanor slipping just a little. He remembered all the times he'd been short on cash, the times a kind stranger had helped him out when he needed it most. Without thinking, he pulled a crumpled $10 bill from his pocket. "Here," he said, handing it to the barista. "I'll cover her drink." The woman blinked in surprise. "Oh, you really don't have to." Marcus shrugged. "It's just coffee. Don't worry about it." The woman studied him for a moment, taking in his worn work clothes and calloused hands. Then she smiled, a real, grateful smile. "Thank you. That's very kind of you." "No problem," Marcus said. "Name's Marcus, by the way." "Danielle," she replied. "Danielle Carter." They stood there for a brief moment as the barista finished making their drinks. Danielle asked Marcus what he did for work, and he told her about his construction job. She nodded politely, but her phone buzzed again, and she quickly checked it. "I really appreciate this," she said as she took her latte. "You didn't have to do that." Marcus just smiled. "Like I said, it's no big deal. Have a good day." Danielle gave him one last grateful look before heading out the door, her heels clicking against the tile floor. Marcus watched her go, then grabbed his own coffee and left for work, not giving the interaction another thought. But what Marcus didn't know was that Danielle Carter wasn't just any woman. She was the CEO of Carter Innovations, a multi-million-dollar tech company. She had been distracted that morning because she was finalizing a huge business deal, one that would change the lives of many people, including Marcus's. That small act of kindness, that simple decision to buy a stranger's coffee, was about to set off a chain of events that would turn Marcus's entire world upside down. But for now, he just sipped his black coffee and headed to the construction site, completely unaware that his life would never be the same again. The morning after buying coffee for the well-dressed woman, Marcus went about his usual routine. He woke up before the sun, pulled on his work boots, and headed to the construction site where his crew was building a new office complex. The memory of helping Danielle at the cafe had already faded to the back of his mind. To Marcus, it was just another small good deed in a life full of them. He believed in helping people when he could, whether it was carrying groceries for an elderly neighbor or buying lunch for a coworker who forgot his wallet. At lunchtime, Marcus sat on a stack of wooden pallets, unwrapping the sandwich he'd packed that morning. His friend and coworker, Javier, plopped down beside him with his own lunch. "Hey, you see the news this morning?" Javier asked between bites. "Some big tech company just bought that old warehouse district near the river. Gonna turn it into some fancy innovation center or something." Marcus shrugged. "Didn't see it." Too busy getting here on time. He took a swig of water as Javier pulled out his phone. Check this out, Javier said, turning the screen toward Marcus. There was a news article with a photo of a sharply dressed black woman shaking hands with the mayor. The headline read, Tech CEO Danielle Carter announces major urban renewal project. Marcus nearly choked on his water. That's her, huh? Javier raised an eyebrow. You know this lady? That's the woman from the coffee shop yesterday, Marcus said, wiping his mouth. The one whose card got declined. Javier's eyes widened. No way. That's Danielle Carter, man. She's like crazy rich. Owns half the tech companies downtown. Marcus stared at the photo, remembering how she'd seemed frustrated but composed when her payment didn't go through. He never would have guessed she was some big-shot CEO. Huh, was all he said before going back to his sandwich. Meanwhile, across town in a sleek high-rise office, Danielle Carter sat at her glass desk, scrolling through reports on her laptop. Her assistant, a young man named Ethan, placed a coffee on her desk this time from the expensive boutique cafe in the building's lobby. Your 11:30 meeting got pushed back, Ethan said. Also, the architects sent over the revised blueprints for the River District project. Danielle nodded absently, her mind elsewhere. Suddenly, she looked up. Ethan, do you remember that construction worker I mentioned? The one who bought my coffee yesterday? Ethan blinked. Vaguely. I want to find him, Danielle said, turning her laptop screen toward him. His name was Marcus. Works construction somewhere in the city. Probably mid-30s, African-American, about 6 feet tall. Ethan frowned. That's not much to go on. There are probably hundreds of construction workers named Marcus in the city. Danielle tapped her fingers on the desk. I know, but there can't be that many who were at the Daily Grind Cafe yesterday around 7:30 a.m. She paused, then added, and check if any construction companies have crews working near that cafe. Maybe we can narrow it down. Ethan opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, then seemed to think better of it. I'll see what I can do, he said before leaving the office. Danielle leaned back in her chair, staring out the window at the city skyline. Most people wouldn't go to such lengths to find a random stranger, but Danielle wasn't most people. In the cutthroat world of business, genuine kindness was rare. The fact that Marcus had helped her without knowing who she was, without expecting anything in return, had stuck with her. Back at the construction site, Marcus spent the afternoon hauling drywall, his muscles burning with the effort. As he worked, his mind kept drifting back to the news article. Why would someone so important be getting coffee at a regular cafe? And why would her card get declined? It didn't make sense. That evening, Marcus stopped by the grocery store on his way home. As he waited in line with his few items, he noticed a magazine rack near the checkout. There, on the cover of Business Today, was Danielle Carter again, this time with the headline, "The Woman Changing Urban Tech." Marcus picked it up, flipping through the pages until he found the article. It talked about how Danielle had started her company from her college dorm room and built it into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. There were photos of her speaking at conferences, touring factories, and meeting with politicians. The cashier cleared her throat, and Marcus realized he'd been holding up the line. He quickly paid for his groceries and the magazine, even though he never usually bought things like that. At home, Marcus sat on his worn couch and read the entire article. He learned that Danielle wasn't just rich, she was known for her philanthropy, for creating programs to help underprivileged kids get into tech careers. The more he read, the more he realized how different their worlds were. Little did Marcus know, at that very moment, Ethan was sitting in a sleek office downtown scrolling through employee records from 3 different construction companies. He'd already called the Daily Grind Cafe to ask about regular customers who worked construction. The barista remembered Marcus. He came in every morning like clockwork. Ethan picked up his phone. Miss Carter? I think I found your guy. The morning sun beat down on Marcus's back as he hauled another load of bricks across the construction site. It had been exactly 1 week since the coffee shop incident, and he had almost forgotten about it entirely. His muscles ached from another long shift, and his work boots were coated in a fine layer of dust. The foreman's whistle blew, signaling their afternoon break. Johnson, the gruff voice of his boss, Mr. Grady, called out from the site trailer. My office. Now. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. He exchanged a quick glance with Javier, who shrugged. "What did you do this time?" Javier joked, nudging him with an elbow. "No idea," Marcus muttered. He straightened his hard hat and made his way across the uneven ground toward the trailer. Maybe he'd messed up on the measurements yesterday. Or maybe they were cutting hours again. His stomach tightened at the thought. The rent was due soon, and he couldn't afford to lose any work. The trailer's metal steps creaked under his weight as he climbed up. Through the smudged window, he could see Mr. Grady sitting behind his cluttered desk. But there was someone else in the room too, a woman in a crisp blazer, her posture perfect even in the flimsy folding chair. Marcus's hand froze on the doorknob. He knew that profile. The elegant curve of her cheekbone, the way her hair fell just so. It was her. The woman from the coffee shop. Danielle Carter. He pushed the door open, the hinges squeaking loudly. Both Mr. Grady and Danielle turned to look at him. Marcus," Mr. Grady said, standing up. His usual gruff demeanor was gone, replaced by an awkward formality Marcus had never heard before. "This is Ms. Carter. She's here to see you." Danielle stood gracefully, extending her hand. "Hello again, Marcus." Marcus wiped his dusty palm on his jeans before shaking her hand, suddenly hyper-aware of how dirty his clothes were compared to her spotless outfit. "Miss Carter," he managed to say. His mouth had gone dry. Mr. Grady cleared his throat. "I'll, give you two some privacy." He practically fled the tiny office, closing the door behind him with a soft click. The trailer seemed to shrink around them. Marcus could hear the muffled sounds of construction outside, the beeping of trucks backing up, the distant shouts of his co-workers. But inside, the air was thick with silence. Danielle gestured to the chair Mr. Grady had vacated. "Please sit." Marcus lowered himself into the chair, his mind racing. Why was a millionaire CEO sitting in his boss's trailer? How had she even found him? As if reading his thoughts, Danielle smiled. "I asked around after we met at the cafe. It took some digging, but I wanted to thank you properly for your kindness." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "You didn't have to do that. It was just coffee." "To you maybe," Danielle said, her dark eyes serious. "But in my world, people are rarely kind without wanting something in return. What you did, it stood out." She leaned forward slightly, resting her hands on the desk. "I bought this construction company last week as part of my urban renewal project. When I realized you worked here, I thought it was—" She paused, searching for the right word. "Fate." Marcus blinked. "You bought the company?" Danielle nodded. "And I'd like to get to know you better. Tell me about yourself, Marcus. How long have you been in construction?" So Marcus told her. He talked about growing up in the city, about learning carpentry from his uncle, about the satisfaction of seeing a building go up piece by piece. The words came easier as he spoke, his initial nervousness fading. "And what do you want to do?" Danielle asked. "If you could build anything, what would it be?" Marcus didn't even have to think about it. "Homes," he said immediately. "Good ones that regular folks can actually afford. Not these fancy condos that sit half-empty." He gestured vaguely toward the window, where the skyline of downtown glittered in the distance. "My cousin got priced out of her neighborhood last year. Had to move her kids halfway across the city. That ain't right." The passion in his own voice surprised him. He hadn't realized how much this bothered him until now. Danielle's expression changed, a spark lighting in her eyes. "Interesting," she said softly. Then louder. "What if I told you I'm starting a new initiative to do exactly that? Affordable, quality housing in underserved communities." Marcus's breath caught in his throat. "You're serious?" "Completely." Danielle reached into her briefcase and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the desk toward him. "I'd like you to be part of it." Marcus opened the folder with trembling fingers. Inside were architectural sketches of modest but well-designed apartment buildings, community centers, plans for parks and playgrounds. And at the bottom, a job offer with his name on it. The title read, Project Development Lead. Marcus looked up, his vision blurring slightly. "But I'm just a construction worker. I don't know anything about—" "You know what matters," Danielle interrupted gently. You know what real people need. I can teach you the rest. Outside, a jackhammer started up, its rhythmic pounding shaking the trailer's thin walls. But Marcus barely heard it. His entire world had narrowed to the folder in his hands, to the impossible opportunity sitting across from him. This wasn't just a job offer. It was a chance to build the kind of world he wanted to live in. Danielle stood, smoothing her blazer. Think about it, she said. But not too long. We break ground in 6 weeks. She was almost to the door when Marcus found his voice. Why me? Danielle turned, her hand on the doorknob. Because when you thought no one was watching, she said simply, you were kind. Then she was gone, leaving Marcus alone in the trailer with nothing but his racing thoughts and a future that had suddenly, unexpectedly, cracked wide open. Marcus sat frozen in the trailer long after Danielle left, staring at the folder she had given him. The sounds of the construction site outside, the shouts of his coworkers, the rumble of heavy machinery seemed distant, like they were coming from another world. His fingers trembled slightly as he flipped through the pages again, reading each word carefully to make sure he hadn't misunderstood. Project Development Lead. The title stared back at him in crisp black letters. The salary listed below it made his throat tighten. It was nearly double what he made now. There were benefits too: health insurance, paid vacation, even something called a retirement plan. Things he'd never had before. But more than the money, it was the job description that made his heart pound. He would help design housing projects from the ground up. He would work with architects and city planners to create homes that working families could actually afford. He would have a real say in how neighborhoods were built. Marcus swallowed hard. This couldn't be real. People like him didn't get offers like this. He was just a guy who swung a hammer for a living. What did he know about leading projects or working with architects? The trailer door creaked open, and Mr. Grady poked his head in. She gone? Marcus nodded, still clutching the folder. Mr. Grady stepped inside fully, his expression unreadable. So, guess you're moving up in the world, huh? I don't understand, Marcus admitted. Why would she offer me this? I'm not qualified. Mr. Grady surprised him by laughing a short, sharp bark. Kid, in all my years, I've learned one thing. When opportunity knocks, you don't ask why. You say thank you and figure out the rest later. He rubbed his stubbled chin. Besides, Carter's no fool. If she picked you, she sees something. Marcus looked down at the folder again. The pages showed beautiful drawings of tree-lined streets with sturdy brick buildings, playgrounds filled with laughing children, community gardens bursting with vegetables. It was everything he'd ever wanted for his own neighborhood growing up. But what if I mess up? The words came out barely above a whisper. Mr. Grady clapped a heavy hand on his shoulder. Then you'll fix it. Same as you do here when a wall's not plumb or a measurement's off. He gave Marcus's shoulder a squeeze. Go home. Think about it. But if I were you, I wouldn't say no to a chance like this. That evening, Marcus sat at his small kitchen table, the folder spread out before him. He'd called his mother first thing, reading her the entire offer letter over the phone. She'd cried happy tears, which had nearly made him cry too. Then he'd called Javier, who had hooped so loudly it hurt Marcus's ear. Now, alone in the quiet of his apartment, the reality of the decision settled over him. If he took this job, nothing would be the same. No more early mornings on construction sites. No more coming home too tired to do anything but shower and fall into bed. No more worrying about whether there'd be enough work next month to pay the bills. But also no more working with his hands the way he loved. No more easy camaraderie with the guys on site. No more certainty of knowing exactly what each day would bring. His phone buzzed. An unknown number flashed on the screen. Marcus? It's Danielle Carter. Marcus nearly dropped the phone. Hi. I realize I sprang a lot on you today, she said, her voice calm and measured. I wanted to give you a chance to ask any questions you might have. Marcus took a deep breath. Why me? He blurted out. You could hire anyone. Someone with experience. A college degree. Not just me. There was a pause on the other end. Then Danielle sighed. Marcus, how many fancy executives do you think actually know what working families need in a home? How many of them have ever worried about making rent? Or how to choose between fixing a leaky roof and buying groceries? Marcus didn't answer. My company is full of brilliant people, Danielle continued. But sometimes brilliance isn't enough. Sometimes you need heart. You need someone who understands the people we're trying to help because he is those people.
She paused.
That day in the coffee shop, you saw a stranger in need and helped without hesitation. That tells me everything I need to know about you. Marcus's throat tightened. No one had ever talked about him like that before. Like he was someone special. Like he mattered. The job is yours if you want it, Danielle said. But I need to know, are you ready to help me change some lives? Marcus looked around his tiny apartment at the leaky faucet he'd been meaning to fix, at the photo of his mom on the fridge, at the worn work boots by the door. Then he looked down at the folder, at the drawings of homes that could give other families the stability he'd always wanted. Yes, he said, the word coming out firm and sure. Yes, I want the job. Danielle's smile came through in her voice. Welcome aboard, Marcus. We start Monday. When he hung up, Marcus sat very still for a long moment. Then he picked up the folder again, tracing the lines of the drawings with one calloused finger. Somewhere out there, families he'd never met were waiting for these homes. And now, against all odds, he was going to help build them. The weekend passed in a blur for Marcus. He spent Saturday packing up his tools from the construction site, his coworkers clapping him on the back and making jokes about how he was going corporate. Their laughter was warm, but Marcus could see the envy in some of their eyes. He promised to stay in touch, though he wasn't sure if he really meant it. Sunday morning found Marcus standing in front of his closet, staring at his meager selection of clothes. Everything he owned was either work-worn denim or faded t-shirts. Nothing that said Project Development Lead. His stomach twisted as he imagined showing up to the sleek downtown office in his usual attire. His phone buzzed with a text from Javier. Asterisk, you ready for tomorrow, big shot? Asterisk. Marcus typed back. Asterisk, no. I think I made a mistake. Asterisk. The reply came instantly. Asterisk, shut up. You got this. Asterisk. Marcus wished he felt as certain as Javier sounded. That afternoon, his mother came over with a pot of her famous chicken soup, the same soup she'd made whenever he was sick as a kid or going through a tough time. She took one look at his worried face and pulled him into a hug without a word. Over bowls of steaming soup, Marcus poured out all his fears. What if I'm terrible at this? What if I embarrass myself? What if Danielle realizes she made a huge mistake? His mother listened patiently, stirring her soup slowly. When he finally ran out of words, she set down her spoon with a soft clink. Marcus Johnson, she said in that no-nonsense voice he knew so well. Do you remember when you were 10 and tried to build that treehouse? Marcus frowned.
Yeah.
It collapsed after 2 days. But did you give up? No, he admitted. I rebuilt it better. His mother nodded knowingly. And when the pipes burst in Mrs. Wilkins' basement last winter, who fixed them when the super wouldn't? Marcus opened his mouth to answer, but she continued. And when Javier's car broke down last month, who figured out it was just a loose wire when the mechanic said it needed a whole new engine? A small smile tugged at Marcus's lips. Okay, I get it. No, I don't think you do, his mother said firmly. You've been solving problems your whole life, Marcus. This job, it's just another problem to solve. Only this time, you'll have help. And a paycheck that actually matches your worth. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Now eat your soup before it gets cold. That night, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling. His alarm was set for 6 a.m., a luxury compared to his usual 4:30 construction wake-up. His new suit, bought in a panicked afternoon shopping trip, hung neatly on his closet door. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Danielle. Asterisk, looking forward to having you on the team tomorrow. Don't worry, we'll take it slow. First day is just introductions and paperwork. Asterisk. Marcus exhaled slowly. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Maybe he could do this. Monday morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through Marcus's window. He dressed carefully in his new suit, the fabric stiff and unfamiliar. The tie felt like it was choking him, but after 3 attempts, he managed a decent knot. The Carter Innovations building loomed before him, all glass and steel, reflecting the morning sun. Marcus's palms were sweaty as he pushed through the revolving doors into the cool, marble-floored lobby. A receptionist smiled at him. "You must be Marcus. Miss Carter is expecting you." 42nd floor. The elevator ride up felt endless. Marcus adjusted his tie for the 10th time, his reflection in the polished doors looking back at him, a construction worker playing dress-up. Then the doors opened, and there stood Danielle, looking every bit the powerful CEO in a tailored dress and heels. But her smile was warm. "Welcome to your first day," she said. "Ready to change some lives?" Marcus took a deep breath. The fear was still there, buzzing in his chest. But beneath it, something new, a spark of excitement, of possibility. "Yeah," he said, stepping off the elevator. "I'm ready." The first few weeks at Carter Innovations had been overwhelming for Marcus. The office moved at a different pace than the construction sites he was used to. Instead of physical labor, his days were filled with meetings, blueprints, and endless spreadsheets. There were moments when he felt completely out of his depth, staring at computer screens filled with numbers and terms he didn't understand. But Danielle had been true to her word. She paired him with mentors, patient people who didn't laugh at his questions. Marcus spent evenings studying building codes and zoning laws, determined to prove he belonged. Slowly, the confusion began to lift. The numbers on the spreadsheet started making sense. The architectural drawings became less like puzzles and more like instructions. By the 3rd month, Marcus found his rhythm. He started speaking up in meetings, offering practical suggestions that made the architects nod in approval. "This wall here," he'd say, pointing at a blueprint, "if we move it 6 inches, we can add closet space without losing square footage." The designers would make the change, and Marcus would feel a quiet thrill of accomplishment. The real test came when they broke ground on the first development, a cluster of townhomes in a neighborhood Marcus knew well. It was an area where families struggled to find decent housing they could afford. Standing on the empty lot that first morning, hard hat in hand, Marcus felt a responsibility heavier than any he'd known before. These wouldn't be just buildings. They would be homes. Construction moved quickly at first, then hit snags, a materials delay, unexpected bedrock that required extra excavation, a rainy week that put them behind schedule. Marcus learned to solve problems on the fly, calling in favors from his old construction contacts when needed. One afternoon, a group of neighborhood kids gathered by the chain-link fence, watching the workers pour concrete. Marcus recognized the curiosity in their eyes the same way he'd watched construction sites as a boy. He walked over and started explaining what they were doing. Soon, he was giving weekly construction tours for local children, pointing out how buildings came together. As the structures took shape, something remarkable happened. The future residents began stopping by, young couples holding hands as they imagined their first real home, single mothers wiping away tears as they pointed out which room would be their child's, elderly neighbors nodding approval at the sturdy construction. Marcus made sure to listen to every comment, every suggestion. When a woman in a wheelchair mentioned the standard counter heights would be difficult for her, he worked with the designers to make adjustments. When a group of teens asked about adding basketball hoops in the common area, he found room in the budget. The day the first families moved in, Marcus arrived before dawn. He walked through the empty units one last time, running his hands along the smooth walls, testing every doorknob and faucet. Outside, the moving trucks began arriving. He watched from the sidewalk as a young boy raced into his new home, shouting with joy as he claimed his bedroom. The boy's mother hugged Marcus tightly, her voice thick with emotion as she thanked him. In that moment, all the long hours, the frustrations, the doubts, they all melted away. That night, Marcus sat on the steps of one of the completed buildings, exhausted but content. Danielle found him there, the sunset painting the new homes in golden light. "You did good," she said simply, sitting beside him. Marcus shook his head. "We did good." He gestured at the buildings around them. This is just the start, right? Danielle smiled. Just the start. As darkness fell and lights began flickering on in the new homes, each window telling a story of a family's fresh beginning, Marcus realized something important. He wasn't just building houses anymore. He was building futures. And he was just getting started. The crisp autumn air carried the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings as Marcus stood before the completed Oak Ridge Community Housing Development. 1 year had passed since that life-changing coffee shop encounter, and the transformation was breathtaking. Where there had once been an empty lot now stood rows of handsome brick townhomes, their windows glowing with warm light. Children's laughter floated from the community playground, and neighbors chatted on freshly poured sidewalks. Marcus adjusted his tie, a habit he developed in his new role as he reviewed the dedication ceremony speech in his hands. The papers trembled slightly, not from nervousness, but from the overwhelming pride swelling in his chest. He remembered every step of this journey, the first nervous day at Carter Innovations, the countless meetings where he'd fought for better materials at lower costs, the triumphant moment when the first family received their keys. Marcus Johnson, public speaker, came a familiar voice behind him. Danielle approached, her designer heels clicking against the pavement. Never thought I'd see the day. Marcus chuckled, folding the speech into his pocket. Yeah, well, don't expect Shakespeare. Just keeping it real. Danielle's smile reached her eyes in a way Marcus had come to recognize over their year of working together. The polished CEO persona she showed the world had gradually given way to something more genuine around him. They'd shared late nights troubleshooting construction delays, celebrated small victories with takeout dinners in her office, and even argued passionately about paint colors of all things. Somewhere between blueprints and budget meetings, they'd become true friends. The ceremony passed in a blur of handshakes and camera flashes. Marcus spoke from the heart about what affordable housing meant to families like the one he'd grown up in. Danielle announced plans to expand the program to 3 more neighborhoods. When the last photo was taken and the crowd dispersed, Danielle gestured toward a bench beneath a newly planted maple tree. We need to talk, she said in that direct way of hers. Marcus's stomach dropped. Those 4 words never meant anything good. Danielle didn't mince words. I want you to head up our entire East Coast housing initiative. More projects. Bigger budget. Your own team. She listed a salary that made Marcus's ears burn. Marcus stared at his hands, callous despite a year of office work. Why me? The question slipped out before he could stop it. Danielle tilted her head, studying him like she had that first day in the coffee shop. Because when you build something, you build it right. Not just the structures, the community. She gestured toward a group of kids playing basketball nearby. You see people, not profit margins. A comfortable silence settled between them as they watched the neighborhood come alive around them. A young mother pushed a stroller past freshly planted flower beds. 2 elderly men played chess at a community table. The scent of someone's dinner, something with garlic and onions, drifted through an open window. Marcus thought back to that morning a year ago when he dug loose change from his pocket to help a stranger. He'd been thinking about nothing more profound than getting to work on time. That simple act of kindness had rippled outward in ways he never could have imagined, not just changing his life, but creating homes for dozens of families, good jobs for construction crews, and now the promise of more communities like this one. I'll do it, Marcus said finally. On one condition. Danielle raised an eyebrow. We keep having our Tuesday lunch meetings, even when we're both too busy. Danielle's laughter rang out across the courtyard, drawing smiles from passers-by.
Deal.
As the sun dipped below the rooftops, casting the community in golden light, Marcus felt a profound sense of rightness settle over him. This was where he belonged, not just in these buildings, but in this work, this mission. That long-ago coffee hadn't just bought him a new career, it had given him purpose. The lesson was clear as the autumn sky above them. Kindness matters in ways we can't predict. A small good deed can plant seeds that grow into something magnificent. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, those seeds grow into homes, into communities, into friendships that change everything. Marcus Johnson, the construction worker who bought a stranger coffee, smiled as children's laughter danced on the breeze. His story was just beginning.
The end.